مرحبا بكم مشاهدينا في حوارات السياق. ذكرت وكالة أسوشيتد بريس أن الرئيس الأمريكي جو بايدن يدرس فرض عقوبات جديدة على ميليشيا الحوثي ردا على التصعيد الأخير بشن هجمات عابرة للحدود بطائرات مسيرة وصواريخ استهدفت الإمارات والسعودية. عموما للمزيد من المتابعة حول هذا الملف ينضم إلينا لورنس كورب مساعد وزير الدفاع الأمريكي السابق. سيد لورنس، مرحبا بك معنا.
Happy to do it.
إدارة بايدن إذن تدرس فرض عقوبات على قادة الحوثي هذا الأسبوع، باعتقادك هل سيتم ذلك وما نوع هذه العقوبات؟
I guess they are considering. Remember that we did not designate the Houthis as a terrorist group, so the world community could provide aid to the country to prevent these human catastrophes. But after the attacks on Qatar and the UAE, we're changing our policies. And what we would do is we would make it very difficult for people who support the Houthis to have access to the international monetary system so they could continue to fund the equipment they need to continue the attacks that they're making on several of the Gulf countries, as well as the innocent people in Yemen.
سؤالي تحديدا عن نوع العقوبات، ما قصدت به أن قيادات الحوثي ليس لها ارتباط بالنظام المالي الإقليمي أو العالمي، فكيف سيتم فرض عقوبات عليها؟
Well, basically, this obviously will not have the same impact as it would on a country, for example, like we're considering Russia right now, because they're not that involved in the international system. But I do think if they're designated a terrorist group again, they're not going to be able to get a lot of assistance from the international community. Don't forget, the international community has been trying to prevent a human catastrophe, which has basically enabled a lot of these Houthis to stay in power. And basically, if they want to, for example, sell any of their oil or anything like that, it will make it more difficult for them to do.
كيف تصف التعاون العسكري بين الولايات المتحدة والإمارات؟
Well, basically what had happened was when the UAE had originally supported the Saudis in fighting in Yemen, we did not provide as much equipment as we normally would because we were trying to stop the killing there. But given what the Houthis have done by attacking the Gulf countries where you have American stationed, we are now going to provide them with sophisticated equipment to defend themselves and to deal with the threat from the Houthis, because the Houthis are not just fighting in Yemen anymore, they're attacking several of the countries in the Gulf region.
تعتقد هذا التعاون الأمريكي سيسهم في تحييد خطر ميليشيا الحوثي؟
Well, what these fighters can do is, yes, they can attack the Houthis who are getting ready to launch attacks. They can attack their facilities that they're doing. We're also sending them missiles that can shoot down any of the missiles that the Houthis might do. We're sending Patriot missiles in addition to the sophisticated fighters. But basically what we're telling the Houthis is you are now going to be attacked not just by the Saudis who have a lot of this equipment, but we're also going to be joined by the Gulf countries.
هذا عن المساعدة الأمريكية. ماذا عن الإمارات؟ ما الذي يفترض أن تحدثه في دفاعاتها لتوفير حماية أفضل؟
Well, two things. One, they can attack the Houthis before they even launch the attacks, and then they have the missile defenses to stop it if they are. We have been very successful in shooting down a lot of the missile attacks that the Houthis have had. In fact, there's a very minimum civilian casualties given what has happened, and fortunately no American has been killed. I think if that had happened, then you would see a much more vigorous US response.
ما الأولوية فيما يخص السياسة الخارجية لإدارة بايدن فيما يتعلق بملف اليمن؟
Well, again, we were trying to stop the human catastrophe there, and we basically stopped providing offensive equipment to the Saudis because in addition to attacking the Houthis, a lot of innocent civilians were killed. We did not designate the Houthis as a terrorist group so that Yemen could get international assistance for their people. Given what has happened recently, I think Biden is going to probably designate them as a terrorist group, which will cut off a lot of their connections to the international community.
هل من منطقة في المنتصف بين إعادة الحوثي إلى قائمة الإرهاب وفي الوقت نفسه المحافظة على مواصلة الجهود الإنسانية؟
It's very difficult to do. And that's one of the reasons why we did not designate them a terrorist group, even though a lot of other countries in the world did. But given what they're doing now, they are basically not just dealing with the situation in Yemen, but they're threatening several of the countries in the Gulf and a lot of places where Americans have bases. If an American were killed, I think this would create a whole different dynamic in the United States and force President Biden even to use American military power in Yemen.
دينيس روس قال إن قرار بايدن إرسال طائرات F-22 إلى الإمارات رداً على إطلاق الحوثي للصواريخ هو رسالة لإيران. أيضاً من الواضح أننا سنقف إلى جانب أصدقائنا يقول، وإن التهديدات الإيرانية لن تخرجنا من المنطقة بل على العكس. هل تتفق مع هذا الطرح؟
I think basically, and you saw it today with the killing of the ISIS leader, and providing the F-22s, which is the most sophisticated aircraft in our inventory, is a signal we're still there. We will defend our allies and send a message to Iran. Even though we can work on the nuclear agreement, this does not mean we're not going to deal with you and those who you support in the region, because even though we have left Afghanistan and people are focusing much more on Russia and China, we're still there. We're going to protect our interests. We're going to protect our allies.
شكرا لورنس كورب مساعد وزير الدفاع الأمريكي السابق للمشاركة معنا في حوارات السياق.
Thank you.
مشاهدينا شكرا على طيب المتابعة. إلى الملتقى.